On the 2nd of July 2018, Aaron Campbell beat and raped 6-year-old Aleesha McPhail. One of Aaron Campbell's friends gave evidence saying that Aaron was drunk and in tears following an argument with his mother on the night of the murder. He was so worried about his friend that he tried to persuade him to spend the night at his house, but Campbell reassured him that he planned to go and get stoned and just go to bed. Aaron Campbell used to buy his cannabis from Robert McPhail, who was Aleesha's father. Aleesha was staying with her father and her grandparents for the summer. Campbell had made calls to Robert McPhail and his girlfriend Tony McClellan earlier that day to try to buy some cannabis. They weren't much older than Aaron Campbell. Campbell left his friend and then he went around to Robert McPhail's house with a knife, intending to steal some cannabis. Aaron was drunk and extremely upset because of the argument that he'd had with his mother. He found that the door was open and so he went in and he came across Aleesha's room first. This was an opportunistic crime. He initially intended to steal some cannabis, but then came across Aleesha McPhail's room. He went into her room with the intent of killing her. Aaron Campbell lifted her out of her bed and left the house without anybody noticing that he'd even been there. After his trial, he told psychologists that after he saw her, all he could think about was killing her. It was almost as though he was consumed by an obsession. He carried her away from the home. She woke up and asked him who he was and where they were going, but he reassured her that he was a friend of her dad's and he was taking her home. He even put his coat around her because she said that she was cold. Campbell then took 6-year-old Aleesha to a secluded location. He then raped her and beat her. It was a particularly violent attack and she had 117 injuries to her body. This indicates a frenzied, almost excited type of attack, which he would have gained pleasure from doing. He enjoyed hitting her. The coroner said that her death was caused by pressure to her face and neck. After the attack, he threw his clothes in the sea and went home for a shower. He later returned as he forgot his phone there. It was CCTV evidence given to the police by his mother that led to his conviction. His mother believed that she was proven that her son couldn't have been involved when she gave the police these tapes. He initially denied any involvement and tried to blame Robert McPhail's girlfriend, saying that they were having an affair and she planted the evidence. Throughout his trial, Campbell was confident, almost to the point of arrogance. In fact, after the trial, he told a psychologist that he'd been satisfied by the way the murder had happened. He also said that it took a lot of effort for him not to laugh at some points during the trial, and that he was surprised it had taken police so long to arrest him. Campbell was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 24 years. Since his conviction, he's not received any visitors from family or friends. This was a crime that shook the community. It was in the Isle of Bute and they had a very small population of around 4,000. Nobody expected a horrific crime such as this to take place in such an idyllic setting. Aaron Campbell was born in Shrewsbury in 2002 and he moved to the Isle of Bute with his parents and his sister when he was around 5. His father worked away a lot and he was a supervisor in the oil industry. He argued a lot with his mother, normally after she'd been drinking. There's some suggestion of emotional and physical abuse at home, and this suggests that there was a lack of boundaries and a lack of respect between him and his mother. His father was mostly working away, so he had very little discipline from him. Any discipline that he did receive was abusive and ineffective. However, neighbours and those that knew the family spoke quite kindly about them. They suggested that they were a nice, normal family. His mother complained of a typical teenage boy who was messy with his clothes and always breaking his phone. He was active and he did well at school, especially at maths and physics. He was physically active and he enjoyed trampolining and swimming. He was described as being well liked, and it was plain to see that he was obviously a key part in the friendship group who exchanged messages on things like Snapchat and WhatsApp, and they partied together in the summer. He was described as having quite a dark sense of humour, but then again, so did most of his friends. They would say that he was always joking around. He had a YouTube channel of him doing parkour and gaming. He enjoyed the attention of other people and he liked having the spotlight on him. He did have a history of self-harm, anxiety and depression, and had been previously tested for attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. He was known to drink alcohol with friends at parties and smoke cannabis. His mum knew, but she felt powerless to do anything, and she just hoped that he'd grow out of it. I did find some other information online relating to what he was like growing up, but I can't really say, with 100% certainty how accurate it is. Whenever you have a shocking crime like this, people like to come forward and they like to tell the tabloids anything about how they could see it coming. There were reports of him attempting to drown a girl, holding her underwater at 6 years old, killing and skinning cats, doing voodoo, carrying knives, and even, one said, looking evil like Damien off The Omen. None of those claims can be verified, and they were all printed in tabloid newspapers, which can sometimes print wrong information. Even before this crime, there was evidence that he had macabre tendencies. During a group chat, he'd said to his friends that he'd like to kill one day for the lifetime experience of it. He did later say in court that it was out of context, and that he followed on by saying it would be more like a short lifetime experience because it would ruin your life if you killed someone. It would be a stupid thing to do. Now just think about that statement for a minute. It would be a stupid thing to do because it would ruin your life. Not that it would be morally wrong, not that it would take the life of another person too soon, not that it would cause pain and anguish to others, but it would ruin your life. This is a very selfish and self-centred thing to say. In saying this, he's seeking fame and notoriety for crime. He's wanting the validation of his friends. However, they believe that he was only joking. If you do want to learn more about the psychology of crime and criminal behaviour and how to profile offenders, there's a massive range of courses available on my website, and there is a link in the description below, so check that out. All of Campbell's past behaviours suggest that he really didn't like himself too much. When people are particularly outgoing or use alcohol or drugs from an early age in social settings like these, they're somewhat hiding behind those substances. They can be a better person, they can be funnier, be more outgoing when they're using it. It can be used to mask a deep-set emotional pain that he isn't willing to deal with or to face. All of his behaviour just screams, I want to be seen and recognised. His father worked away, his mother frequently drank alcohol, and he never received any consequences for his behaviour. His mum felt powerless to do anything about him going out drinking and taking drugs. But that kind of behaviour is a cry for attention and a red flag. Something negative was going on inside his mind that he wanted to block out at that time. He'd even been referred to the youth justice team and had engaged with them because of low-level offending behaviour with his peers. Social workers worked closely with his school, but none of the concerns were ever made public knowledge. He was said to have engaged and worked well with those involved, and that they didn't see him as a risk to the general public. Campbell hadn't gone to the house with the intent of killing. He'd gone to steal cannabis. He told a psychologist that after he saw her, all he could think about was killing her. It's almost as though he was consumed by some type of obsession. He wanted to express his anger, and he let it out, and he saw the opportunity to do this with little Aleesha. This was something that he'd previously spent time thinking about, and now he was faced with an opportunity to carry that act out. So in one sense, he acted on impulse because this was a crime of opportunity. But in another sense, it was something he'd enjoyed thinking about in the past, and he was simply presented with an opportunity to act upon those impulses at that time. He carried her away from her home. She woke up and asked where they were and where they were going, and he reassured that he was a friend of her dad's and that he was taking her home. He even put his coat around her because she said that she was cold. Now this is a very cold and manipulative thing to do. He put the young girl at ease and he reassured her so that she wouldn't raise the alarm close to any houses. At this point, he was determined what he wanted to do to that girl. He wanted to get his anger and his rage out and was focused on being able to do it by reassuring her that she didn't cry. Aaron is quite a strong young man. He worked out at the gym and would bench press 50 kilograms. Aleesha only weighed 20 kilos, so it wouldn't have taken much power off him to overpower her. He took her to a secluded location where he raped and he beat her. And it was a very violent attack and she had 117 injuries. And as I said earlier, that indicates a frenzied, almost excited type of attack. And Campbell would have gained a lot of pleasure from doing this. He enjoyed hurting her. Once he started to release his anger and rage, it was probably impossible for him to stop until he chose to. The coroner said that her death was caused by the pressure to her face and neck, and Aleesha must have been crying or screaming when he raped her. He saw the life leaving that poor little girl's body as she gave up her fight for life. Aaron Campbell comes across as being somebody who craves attention. He needs and wants to be in the spotlight and the centre of attention. He had quite a few friends and was popular in school. He would say shocking things to get a reaction out of his friends. And this was so extreme that he even took a picture of himself on the afternoon after the murder and sent it to friends saying, "Found the guy who done it." There's evidence that he'd fantasised about committing a crime such as this. He'd Googled how do police find DNA on his phone. At that point, he may not have had any sort of solid plan in place to kill anyone. However, once he was presented with that opportunity, he impulsively acted it out. During the crime, he wasn't likely to have thought beyond the immediate time frame. He will have just been living and acting in that moment. In fact, in the statement, he said that once he saw the girl, all he thought about was killing her. Aaron Campbell is a callous individual. He clearly felt very little empathy for Aleesha. He enjoyed committing this crime and took a great deal of pleasure from it. He's very arrogant and he believes that he's superior to others. However, he does crave the attention of others. He shows that he needs to be in the spotlight and receive attention and validation from his friends. These kinds of traits are similar to how a sociopath would act. At the time, there was some discussion and suggestion that his interest in a video game called Slender Man had fueled his obsession with abducting and killing. However, a renowned cyber psychologist said that there's no evidence to suggest that games such as these influence violent behaviour. In fact, she said that games such as these can reduce the need to act out violently because they provide a sort of outlet for the frustration and aggression. So in conclusion then, his father worked away a lot. He constantly argued with his mum and there's possibly some emotional or physical abuse at home. He probably resented his mother and he had a lack of discipline. If we don't learn appropriate ways to express negative feelings and emotions, these build up and there has to be a breaking point. He had a YouTube channel of him doing parkour and gaming. He enjoyed the attention of others and he liked having that spotlight on him. And this just shows behaviours that draw the focus towards him, with the behaviour shouting basically, "Look at me." He did this in the group chat, saying that he might kill somebody one day for the lifetime experience of it. He did it the day after the murder by taking a picture of himself and saying to his friends, found the guy that did it. He had a history of self-harm and anxiety and depression. He'd previously been tested for ADHD. And this shows that he doesn't really like himself too much. If nobody shows you that you're loved, valued and wanted, we begin to think that it must be true and there must be something wrong with us. This is when we develop coping mechanisms such as loud, obnoxious behaviour or drinking or using drugs. This was a frenzied attack because she had 117 injuries to her body. He enjoyed hurting her. Once he started to release the anger and rage, it was impossible for him to stop until he chose to. And finally, after the trial, he told the psychologist that he'd been satisfied by the way the murder happened. The subtext to that statement could be, I am satisfied I am seen. I am satisfied that I'm being noticed. I am satisfied that I expressed my resentment and anger. Aaron Campbell was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 27 years, but on appeal, this was changed to 24 years. Since his conviction, he's not received any visitors from family or friends, and he is currently held in Polmont Young Offenders Institute, where he's been attacked and threatened by other inmates. Because of the horrific nature of his crime, even the worst sex offenders there want to hurt him. Campbell recently turned 18, alone, in his cell, mostly confined within that cell. He's got a small number of magazines, a small television. Whenever he has to move around the jail, there's double the guards that are assigned to him. The Crime and Investigation Channel has produced a documentary about the murder called Kids Who Kill, Evil Up Close. However, Aleesha's mum has spoken out and she's urged people not to watch it because it gives Campbell the attention that he craves. Her mum Georgina has encouraged other people instead to drown out Campbell by sharing photos of Aleesha smiling. If you do want to know more about this case, I've left a few links in the description, and there are links to much more detail and attachment theory. Thanks then, I'll see you next week. I hope you learned something new. Bye for now.